My name is Robert Sarazin Blake. I cannot tell you the story of John Prine. I can only tell you my story of John Prine. My story of John Prine starts out in the back of my father's van. It might have been the old brown van, or it might have been the 1978 blue Volkswagen microbus that he bought from his childhood friend Hersman and gifted to me years later for my 18th birthday. That Volkswagen van crashed and rolled 6 months after my 18th birthday when I fell asleep at the wheel, narrowly escaping an early exit off stage right. But in either case, in either van, my story begins with hearing John Prine on cassette from the back of the van. My dad kept a box of cassettes between the two front seats, and on summer road trips, my father, sister, and I would each get a turn to choose a cassette. I'm sure we had John Prine LPs in the house, but I remember the cassettes. In the 80s, it was common practice to tape your LPs so you could hear them in the car. I grew up with these cassettes, and by the time I knew what I was listening to, I already knew the songs. Whenever the subject of John Prine has come up in my life, I've boasted that I learned more moral lessons from his first album than I did from the Bible. Yes, that album. No title, man in a blue denim shirt sitting on a bale of hay. The one that opens like this. And then the kicking band comes in. A band that were not his friends, but were musicians at the American Sound Studios in Memphis, Tennessee, under the direction of Arif Mardin, who had previously worked with Aretha Franklin and King Curtis. This band was scratching its head when the country folk poet brought in 13 songs, all in the same key, but yet found a way, like all great bands do, to expand the musical texture without losing aim of supporting the core of the song. The album showcases not only John Prine's great songs, but also twangy steel guitar and just enough groove to push it out of the square box that is traditional folk or country. The album opens up. When I woke up this morning, things are looking bad. Looked like total silence was the only friend I had. Bowl of oatmeal tried to stare me down and won. It was 12 o'clock before I realized I was having no fun. But fortunately, I had the key to escape reality, and I have the suspicion that if it wasn't for that band, the chorus might sound something like, and you may see me tonight with an illegal smile. It don't cost very much, but it lasts a long while. But one thing that bands do is they help songwriters make things just a little bit better, and I'm guessing, man, one of them suggested, let's do the chorus in 3/4 time. Fortunately, I had the key to escape reality, and you may see me tonight with an illegal smile. Don't cost very much, but it lasts a long while. Won't you please tell the man I didn't kill anyone? I was just trying to have me some fun. Of course, I have no idea. Perhaps John already was doing the chorus in 3/4 time, but I have a really good idea that it was the band's idea to add one bar of funky groove on the bass right before the top of the second verse, so that the second verse has a little pickup right before it gets in, and the bass player dies down right before the second verse starts. Last time I checked my bankroll, it was getting thin. But moral lessons is what I started talking about before, and moral lessons is what I'm going to celebrate about John Prine's first record, entitled John Prine. So let's start with where we're at. Lesson number 1, don't be a complainer. Figure out how to have your own fun. Shall I sing it again? Most of us have thought at one time or another that this song was about smoking pot, but Prine denies it. And when I first heard this song, I was 10 years away from my first joint, and it made perfect sense to me. Don't complain and figure out how to have your own fun. And you may see me tonight with an illegal smile. Don't cost very much, but it'll last a long while. Won't you please tell the man I didn't kill anyone? I was just trying to have me some fun. Well done, hot dog bun, my sister's a nun. Moral lesson number 2 from John Prine's first record. Never let patriotism override your humanity. Your flaked cow won't get you into heaven anymore. It's already overcrowded from your dirty little war. Jesus don't like killing, no matter what the reason's for. And your flagged cow won't get you into heaven anymore. Moral lesson number 3 from John Prine's first record. Talk to old people. We had an apartment in the city. Me and the red like living there. It'd been years since the kids had grown, a life of their own left us alone. John and Linda live in Omaha. Joe is somewhere on the road. We lost Davy in the Korean War, and I still don't know what for. Don't matter anymore. So if you're walking down the street sometime and spot some hollow ancient eyes, please don't just pass them by and stare as if you didn't care. Say hello in there, hello. That's moral lesson number 3. Talk to old people from Hello in There on John Prine's first record. There's also a secondary lesson that I learned from that song, which is that somewhere on the road is an acceptable place to be, maybe even desirable, certainly better than death and perhaps equal, if not superior to Omaha. Somewhere on the road was a place that existed, is what I learned, and I wanted to go there. Moral lesson number 4, be present for your own life. From Donald and Lydia. They made love in the mountains, they made love in the streams, they made love in the valleys, they made love in their dreams. And when they were finished, there was nothing to say, 'cause mostly they made love 10 miles away. Moral lesson number 5 from 6 o'clock news. There are consequences for your actions. Best to finish what you start. Wanda had a baby, 1951. Father was a stranger, stranger was a son. Call that child James Lewis, call these rooms a home. Changing all them diapers, polish all that chrome. Come on, baby, spend the night with me. Sneaking through the closet in the diary. Don't you know All he saw was all there was to see. Old town saw Jimmy on the 6 o'clock news. Brains were all on the sidewalk, blood was on his shoes. Come on, baby, spend the night with me. Come on, baby, spend the night with me. In addition to the moral lesson from the 6 o'clock news, there's a little tidbit of a songwriting lesson in there, which is that if you introduce a character in the first verse and use a nickname for the same character in the last verse, you will invite intimacy with the listener, and they will appreciate it. And moral lesson number 6. In this song, Far From Me, there's a line that sticks out to me the most, so I say this for last, with the moral lessons from John Prine's first record. The moral lesson is materialism is an empty religion, and try not to live in self-delusion. Well, I started the engine, and I gave it some gas. Kathy was closing her purse, but we hadn't gone far in that beat-up old car, and I was prepared for the worst. Will you come see me tomorrow? No, I got too much to do. Well, a question ain't really a question if you know the answer to. And the sky's black and still now, on the hill where the angels sing. Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring? And the sky's black and still now, on the hill where the angels sing. Ain't it funny how an old broken bottle looks just like a diamond ring? But it's far, far from me. These 6 songs and 6 others are all on the same album, with that kicking band that takes each song and makes it better than it was on its own. Critics might say he never again makes a record as good as his first, but who cares? Van Morrison with Astro Weeks also was great out the gate. There's nothing wrong with being great out the gate. John Prine recorded his first album in 1971, and over the next 7 years he made 5 more records: Diamonds in the Rough, Sweet Revenge, Common Sense, Bruised Orange, and in 1979, Pink Cadillac. In the 1980s, he releases Storm Windows, Aimless Love, and German Afternoons. While it's tempting to compare records, I prefer Hamel on Trial's view of records made by the greats. He says he thinks of them like letters from friends. He doesn't worry if it's a good letter or a bad letter. He just knows he wants to read it. It's also important to recognize on every John Prine record there's a song, a verse, a couplet, or perhaps just a line, one singular line that is better than other artists' entire albums. While I don't expect German Afternoons from 1986 to be in many listeners' desert island collection, it does contain this opening verse that makes me bow in humbleness. You come home late, you come home early. You come home big when you're feeling small. You come home straight, you come home curly. sometimes don't come home at all. John Prine introduces you into worlds with his lines that are so understandable. You feel like not only could you have written them yourself, you feel like you have already written them yourself. And then he goes on to a line that is so impossibly good that only John Prine could have written it. About the time I entered high school in 1991, John Prine released The Missing Years. And what I didn't understand at that time when I was digging into all the music and writers I'd come to love and who had shaped my poetic and worldview is that my heroes, my elders, were still producing great work. It was easy to assume at that time that their great work was behind them. What I know now is that only now, in April of 2020, is John Prine's great work behind him. He was making great songs then and continued to make great songs for another 30 years. He even left us with a song to ease his leaving called When I Get to Heaven. There's no Donald and Lydia on The Missing Years, nor is there 6 o'clock news. But he'd already written those songs. He didn't have to write them again. And there are songs that cut to the heart of the situation and celebrate in his own charming way midlife acceptance of defeat, loss of control, and acceptance. Everything's cool, everything's okay. Why, just before last Christmas, my baby went away. I found it real surprising to hear myself then say, everything is cool, everything's okay, everything is cool, everything's okay. Kiss a little baby, give a little smile. If you take an inch, give 'em back a mile. If you lie like a rug and you don't give a damn, you're never gonna be as happy as a clam. There's a big old goofy man dancing with a big old goofy girl. Oh, baby, it's a big old goofy world. And there's also the 6-minute epic, which does what all great John Prine songs do, and irreverently illuminates the reverent. Jesus, The Missing Years. It was raining, it was cold. West Bethlehem's no place for a 12-year-old. He packed his bags and he headed out to find out what the world was all about. He went to France, he went to Spain. He found love and he found pain. He found stores, so he started to shop. But he had no money, so he got in trouble with a cop. Kids in trouble with the cops from Israel didn't have no home, so he cut his hair and he moved to Rome. It was there he met his Irish bride, and they rented a flat on the Lower East Side of Italy, that is. Music publishers, book binders, Bible belters, money changers, spoon benders, and lots of pretty Italian chicks. Charlie bought some popcorn, Billy bought a car. Someone almost bought the farm, but they didn't go that far. Things shut down at midnight, at least round here they do, 'cause we all reside down the block inside at 23 Skidoo. college. One Halloween I dressed up as John Prine, which required walking around with a guitar and answering a lot of questions. One party responded when he heard who I was by singing the chorus. Grandpa was a carpenter, built houses, stores, and banks, chain-smoked Camel cigarettes and hammer nails and planks. It was level on the level, shaved even every door, voted for Eisenhower 'cause Lincoln won the war. It was familiar to me, but I didn't know it as well as I should have. I marveled at what Prine could convey with so few words. I bought a cassette copy of 1973's Sweet Revenge and listened to Grandpa Was a Carpenter along with Dear Abby, Onomatopoeia, Please Don't Bury Me, and what has become the annual favorite, Christmas in Prison. In my 20s and early 30s, I attended the Kerrville Folk Festival for 10 years. The Kerrville Folk Festival is an 18-day festival. I met many great songwriters from all over the country and the world who sweated all year in the Tower of Song and gathered in the Texas Hill Country for camaraderie once a year. It was there I met Andrew Calhoun and heard his great song called Going Down to See John Prine. Growing up in Chicago, Calhoun saw Prine when Prine was just starting out, and Calhoun was a young teen. I'd sing it for you, but I think it'd be best to have Calhoun sing it himself.
My folks did not go out much, not even a movie. And folk was politic back then, protest and feeling groovy. We lived out in the suburbs, it was a special thing when they drove into Chicago to hear a mailman sing. That next week they took my sister, 1 week later they took me. I got a stamp on the back of my hand and I saw my destiny. Just an ordinary mailman with a gift for stringing words, who wrote and sang the greatest songs that we had ever heard. And everyone was different, and every time was new, and every other month or so he'd write a song or two, with mugs of Coke and peanuts in the musk and cigarettes. We'd sit through Rockstar Wannabes to hear John's second set. Hello in there and Paradise and Flag Decal again, and one he never did record. Will anybody be my friend? Will anybody be my friend? At Glen Ellen Junior High School, the guys called me a fag. My homeroom teacher called me out, I wouldn't pledge the flag. There was Johnny Cash on Wednesday nights to make life worth the time. Waiting for the weekend, going down to see John Prine. On Christmas there was no one in the old Fifth Peg's back room but our family and one couple listening in the gloom. Then I called out a favorite song. John stopped his show and smiled at me in a growing silence. There I felt like heaven's child. It's a blessing I would carry through trouble, dread, and tears. And I gave John a pocket knife that he kept for luck for years. With 2 full sets and sometimes 3 each night, a double bill. Everybody knew the reason that black room began to fill, with a feature in the Daily News and 2 in the Sun-Times. There were folks from every walk of life going down to see John Prine. And so it was a joyful thing, and sorry now, because it's just a ghost of memory how beautiful it was. That song so filled with loneliness should leave us less alone, as if to love your neighbor were as easy as the phone. He'd sing, a friend that's been turned down will be a friend of mine. Strangers felt like family then, going down to see John Prine. So we all were happy, and happy for his sake, when Goodman brought Christopherson to score John his big break. We'd see him at the Airy Crown, up there where he belongs. To think that now the hungry world would get to hear these songs. And a few years on in Boston, we went down to see his show. We waited in the hallway, but he couldn't say hello. We saw him being interviewed, my sister Jane explained. That's all part of his job now, publicity's insane. The critics raved, the drunkards roared, the groupies got in line. It would never be the same going down to see John Prine. Folky Sunday softball, for weeks they had it planned. John would come to play a game with his entire band. I had my year-old son there, we had brought him down to see a man who just ignored him and barely noticed me. He was out of shape and shouting like his good time wasn't real. Then he headed out for a private thing with the boys in center field. And I wished it didn't matter, and I wished I didn't care. Just my tough luck to love someone who wasn't really there. On a sunny summer afternoon, for me the game was blown. Who'd believe this strung out fool was the man who wrote Sandstone? At Rose Record Store on Ashland in 1987, it felt a mile awkward when I stopped in to see him. A woman had her picture taken with him there and signed, but it just made me nervous going down to see John Prine. And at his last accounting, there's bound to be a do with St. Peter and the Muses and Montgomery's Angel too, saying who's to speak for anyone and who's to cast a stone at one who eased our loneliness but couldn't bear his own. And if I reach the pearly gates when comes my time to go, hope St. Peter's not too busy to step out and say hello. Will he sing the friend that's been turned down will be a friend of mine, or stamp the back of my right hand going down to see John Prine? There in the gloom I will request my favorite songs again. Paradise, hello in there, will anybody be my friend? That's paradise, hello in there, will anybody be my friend?
I love the journey Calhoun goes on in that song, dealing with Prine not only as a performer, not only the songs of John Prine, but also the man. The realization that John Prine is indeed a human that puts on his pants one leg at a time and gets drunk and makes mistakes. His fans suspect this and know this, but us songwriters, we know it too. But I believe I'm not alone as a songwriter in believing somehow John Prine flies above us all. In my 30s, I worked at the Mount Baker Theater as a stagehand. For the first half of that time, the house lights were still controlled by resistance dimmers, which lived in the projection booth up behind the balcony. For those who don't know theater terms, house lights are the lights over the audience that get turned off when the show begins, and resistance dimmers control the amount of electricity going to the lights by way of huge handles that need to be pulled 180 degrees and then switched off. In a modern setup, it's a quick flip of the switch at the light board. In this historical theater, at that time, it required one stagehand for the entire show to be on hand to flip, turn, and pull the handles to make the lights go up. I've never spent a more enjoyable wage-earning hour than the 90 minutes I spent in the back row of the balcony after turning the house lights down, listening to John Prine, knowing all I had to do was be ready to turn the lights back on after the encore. I got to hear a master at work, somebody whose songs have been living inside of me all of my life. A friend of mine who's 20 years older than me said of the concert, "I've been watching John Prine concerts for 40 years, and he plays many of the same songs that I know every word of. And each time I hear them live, I cry like it's the first time." I was on a similar emotional ride as he played songs from his then 40-year career. I heard a lot of songs I knew, and I also felt tears on my cheek. But also I heard some songs I'd missed along the way. We were standing by peaceful waters, standing by peaceful waters. Whoa. Many years later, we found ourselves up in Canada trying to save our marriage, or to catch a few fish, whatever came easier. That night she fell asleep in my arms, humming the tune to Louie Louie. Ah, baby, we gotta go. We were standing by peaceful waters, standing by peaceful waters. Whoa. I was extremely excited when I got the call to work the John Prine show. I didn't know exactly what would be happening, but I knew that I would at least get to hear some of Prine and maybe get close to him, you know? Load-in for music events at the theater typically happen around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The crew arrives with sound equipment and band gear. The local stagehands help set the lights, and sound check the band. Sometimes the star of the show shows up for the sound check, sometimes the crew can do it for them. I was excited to hang with his crew and tried to get a few questions in about their boss. Apparently John didn't hang out that much with his two-man sound crew, but they reported he was friendly, and occasionally on nights off he would take the band and the crew out to very, very good meals and pick up the bill. Luckily, I was able to angle my way into being the stagehand that got to assist the guitar tech. For those of you who don't know, many professional musicians travel with someone whose entire job it is to take care of the guitar. That person is called a guitar tech. Keith Richards' guitar tech has a much larger job than John Prine's guitar tech. John Prine has more or less played the same Martin D28 all of his life. And you can imagine how delighted I was when the guitar tech asked if I'd like to play a few chords on it. It sounded good. While picking out a few chords, I got the story that this guitar was not actually Prine's D28. The guitar tech had dropped Prine's D28 on the floor of a stage a few months earlier, and it was in the shop. The D28 that I had in my hands was Steve Goodman's D28. Steve had given it to his pal, John Prine, in the 80s, shortly before he died of leukemia. It was a very, very good day of work. After the encore and the house lights were turned back up, I returned to the stage to help with loadout. Now, it isn't against the rules for local stagehands to talk to the artist. At times it is in fact necessary, and at other times not at all necessary, but certainly allowed. It is, however, against the job description to not do your job. And after the show, my job was to help pack guitars, speakers, lights, and other gear. Still, I was hoping there would be a moment when John walked back across the stage en route from the dressing room to the tour bus, and I would be able to meet him. I kept finding reasons to walk down the back hallway where he might be walking out, and I waited around, and just when the gear had been packed up and the crew had disappeared into the night, I took one last chance at a meander in the hallway, and sure enough, I came face to face with the man himself. I thanked him for his show and told him how much I loved his songs, and we shook hands. I might have even told him I ran the house lights. We were standing by peaceful waters, standing by peaceful waters. Whoa. 5 years ago, I was touring Europe, and for a few days, the Swiss singer Melissa Kassab traveled with me. The train between Frankfurt and Luxembourg is a beautiful ride following the River Rhine, and surprisingly, an unpopular route. We had a car to ourselves and sang the whole way. Mostly we sang the same two songs over and over. The Streets of Baltimore, as learned from Graham Parsons, and Prine's Clocks and Spoons. Another one that had slipped by me all these years from his second record, Diamonds in the Rough. We sang the songs, working on the harmony, as we watched the river and rolled down the line, somewhere on the road. Clocks and spoons, empty rooms, it's raining out tonight. What a way to end the day, turning out the lights. Shoot the moon right between the eyes. I'm sending most of me to the sunny countryside. Clocks and spoons, empty rooms, it's raining out tonight. What a way to end the day, by turning out the lights. Shoot the moon right between the eyes. I'm sending most of me to the sunny countryside. We sang the same songs over and over, working on the harmony as we watched the river and rolled down the line, somewhere on the road. Prine's lyrics, they get so deep in us they become part of us. He's foundational. I would say everyone should learn a John Prine song, but I don't have to, because you already know him. 6 months ago, in October of 2019, I was in John Prine's hometown. Not Chicago, not Nashville. No, though he was born in Chicago and he lived in Nashville. I was in his last chosen hometown of Kinvara, County Galway, Ireland. I was with my mother and my stepfather on their 30th wedding anniversary. I was the driver on their Irish holiday, and we'd been driving all day in the pouring rain, and the last 5 miles had been a detour on backcountry single lanes. I had intended to let them celebrate their anniversary dinner alone, but there was only one restaurant open, and we were all hungry. I was charmed, of course, to be in Ireland, but even more so to be in John Prine's hometown. Population 1,351. Eating in this restaurant, I could only assume he knew well. I asked the waitress, where does John Prine sit when he comes in here? With a twinkle and a smirk, she said, well, just about where you're sitting. She then told me the pubs he was most likely to be found in. And after I walked my parents back to their B&B, I went to take a look. One pub was closed and the other was very, very, very quiet. No sign of Prine. Still I was charmed to be walking the rainy streets of the village where my hero had chosen to spend his time for however much time he had left.
When I get to heaven, I'm going to shake God's hand, thank him for more blessings than one man can stand. Then I'm going to get a guitar and start a rock and roll band. Check into a swell hotel. Ain't the afterlife grand? And then I'm going to get a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm going to smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm going to kiss that pretty girl on the tilt-a-whirl, 'cause this old man is going to town. Then as God is my witness, I'm getting back into show business. I'm going to open up a nightclub called the Tree of Forgiveness and forgive everybody ever done me any harm. Why, I might even invite a few choice critics, those syphilitic parasitics, buy 'em a pint of Smithwick's and smother 'em with my charm. 'Cause then I'm going to get a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm going to smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm going to kiss that pretty girl on the tilt-a-whirl. Yeah, this old man is going to town. Yeah, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna take that wristwatch off my arm. What are you gonna do with time after you bought the farm? And then I'm gonna go find my mom and dad. And good old brother Doug, well, I bet him and cousin Jackie are still cutting up a rug. I wanna see all my mama's sisters, 'cause that's where all the love starts. I miss them all like crazy. Bless their little hearts. And I always will remember these words my daddy said. He said, "Buddy, when you're dead, you're a dead peckerhead." I hope to prove him wrong, that is, when I get to heaven. 'Cause I'm gonna have a cocktail, vodka and ginger ale. Yeah, I'm gonna smoke a cigarette that's 9 miles long. I'm gonna kiss that pretty girl on the tilt-a-whirl. Yeah, this old man is going to town. Yeah, this old man is going to town. Do-do-do, let that